Hello everyone, welcome to Dojima Podcast. This is Arvind from Dojima Network. We are thrilled to bring you another insightful episode of recent developments in blockchain and Web3. Today, we are diving deep into the world of ephemeral rollups and how this innovation technology could reshape blockchain scalability. Let's welcome Mr. Sarvesh to know more about this. Hi Sarvesh, how are you doing?
Hi, Arvind. I'm doing good. Thanks for having me here.
Okay, so Sarvesh, before starting, can you tell me more about your company and experience with the blockchain?
Sure thing. So currently, I function as the founder of Mugen Network. Mugen Network is kind of an infrastructure designed to enable seamless cross-chain communication and automation. We are currently live with a GMP on AlphaNet and going across, I would say, with a bridge deployment soon, earlier next month. My journey with Web3, I would say, started in 2017, trading Dota 2 items for BTC. Since then, been an active user of the tech because PayPal didn't work in India back then, sadly. And yeah, that's how I would say I was kind of drawn into this. Went full time in 2019, 2020 with a project called as Veracity as a founding team member. Scaled it across the line. We had deployments across Tencent Games, Huya, Riot Games, and even Spotify while we are building it. So there I was kind of, amazed by, okay, fine, how we actually can put this technology to use across real life use case scenarios. So since then, have been kind of, actively pushing to have that commercial or B2B adoption. So I get a kick out of just creating B2B applications around blockchain.
So you clearly have a rich experience in Web3.
I wouldn't call it rich. I call it adventurous. Like, okay, fine.
Yeah.
It's multiple failures. I mean, 4 or 5 successes, but at least 1,000+ failures. So it's kind of funny and adventurous.
So, Sarvesh, can you tell us like what are these ephemeral rollups and how would you describe them to someone who is really new to the concept of layer 2 solutions?
Okay, so now let's kind of take a simple photography example, to be honest. Now, photography is often considered expensive, and it is expensive when you kind of want to pursue it with professional tooling. Okay, now, for example, I was in the esports and event side production, right? So Sony A7, right, is a very standard camera that, or A9, like the Sony Alpha series is something that everyone uses on a professional level for point and shoot or just basic studio. Now that camera is gonna cost somewhere between $1,000 to $1,200 depending on where you are in the world. Now, if I want to click pictures, is that the thing which I buy? No, right? I mean, we would want to start small. So I would say ephemeral rollups are your, I would say, basic layer tools, but in a very disposable manner. It's like use them till you need it, and then you could discard it or cage the data somewhere on chain. So it's for those applications wherein you need that chain, but you won't really see a use of it in the long term, but you still need it. You have your ephemeral rollups. So they just discard the data after the transaction stakes have completed or have been achieved. And I would say it's much more on the sustainable side, wherein you as an service provider or a user are not really stressing out your own infrastructure as well as your own pocket, running something that's not used.
Okay, so mostly what I have understood is like a temporary kind of application that runs till the state is achieved.
Yeah.
Stated that, how do you differ? Like, what's the difference between ephemeral rollups and other types of rollups, like CK rollups and optimistic rollups, both in terms of functionality and also use cases?
So now, optimistic rollup, right? It's trust minimized environments, and that kind of makes your rollups kind of not much usable when you look at a lot of real-time applications. Like if you want to kind of check for a certain instance or a process every millisecond, right? Optimistic rollups are not your thing because they are only checking for fraud or malfunction or misalignment only when they feel the need.
Oh.
So
In most of the cases, they assume that the transaction is Almost right.
Yeah. So that assumption scenario, right, doesn't really uh, feel like be the case, because when I think of ephemeral rollups, right, I think of it probably being used behind some HFT trading, or like MMORPG battle logs, or even something like your vehicle logs. Now, let's say you are just testing any production of an application or an instrument. You want defining logs or by the millisecond. Optimistic rollups are not really your thing. And ZK rollups, like everyone knows, validation and computation of a ZK is very costly and time consuming. So uh, they can't really be there, because to verify the transactional validity. Now, let's say I mentioned that gaming example, because gaming and blockchain for me go hand in hand. If you can build it around gaming, you can build it around anything. Now, if I use ZK based validation or ZK based rollup, right? By the time my player has completed his action, he has exited the game, the rollup is still busy computing. Okay, fine. What has happened? So makes it completely obsolete. But unlike that, right? So now ephemeral rollup. So let's say now all of us have played Counter Strike, right? It could be the ideal scenario for a Counter Strike match. We all played the game. The match is over. The score has been recorded. Rollup is discarded.
Okay, okay.
It served its purpose for that 30 to 40-minute instance. It did its job.
Okay, got it, got it, got it. Okay. So, what are some real benefits of ephemeral rollups, particularly in terms of speed, efficiency, and transaction costs?
See, now this might be an India specific example, but now these days Paytm kind of is using temporary UPI addresses to just facilitate payments. So a lot of these micro transactions, right? Now let's say a lot of these ticketing websites, which are kind of moving on to blockchain, like they could be using ephemeral rollup. So you could have ephemeral rollup set up for every concert that you are kind of pushing out, have the data which is instance specific to that specific event, recorded. Once the event is done, discarded. Then you're also looking at shipping. You have all of these invoice financing, right? Now you could just have a roll up dedicated to a specific client or a specific allocation or a specific target group. And once the complete transaction is settled, you could be discarding it. Then you could also kind of use it for a lot of DeFi based applications, which are like instance specific. Like if you're staking or restaking across a year, it could be kind of inserted there. But if you're looking at a possibly long term application, like I would say vehicular data or just your data management kind of on chain, it's bad. But there's one more possibility where I see ephemeral rollups kind of taking in the highest, I would say, adoption is somewhere between, let's say, tickets.
What is it? Tickets.
Tickets, yeah, support systems.
Okay, okay.
You have a lot of these uh, high scale events, right? Or let's say high frequency kind of traffic scenarios for a certain amount. These could kind of, come in handy for just processing of data for these situations.
And given their temporary nature, how do ephemeral rollups maintain data integrity and security, especially after the rollup data is discarded?
See, after the data is discarded, right? It just kind of, I may be wrong here, again, not technical warning, but it's mostly through what I've read, right? So after like the data is discarded, right, you could possibly compute your finality state in a ZK proof uh, to be kind of retrieved later. You have, I would say, something called as state commitments, wherein you could kind of just have a definitive proof of the finality being recorded, stored somewhere. Then you also kind of could go down the sides of, I would say, uh, the cryptography way, wherein you are storing your data inside of like certain Merkle tree infrastructures, or you could also be going the old school, like just have a database somewhere.
Mostly we need to commit a finalized state somewhere. And again, if we want to check few data points, we need to reconstruct everything and we need to check whether the final state is matching his of both cases.
And I feel like there is, like, I may be wrong here. Charan, please edit it out if it's wrong. But yeah, there might be a possibility wherein you could kind of save that finality state and using the DA layer components also recreate certain amount of scenarios if they need to be recreated.
And what are the types of applications or industries stand to benefit the most from ephemeral rollups? And why are these industries well suited for this type of rollup? From your previous examples, I guess gaming is one of the perfect example for using ephemeral rollups.
Yep. So you have gaming, then US elections are around the corner. So elections, uh, maintaining sovereign data safely on chain for a specific given time or a specific time frame validity. Then like polling, like I said, elections. Then micro payments or micro transactions across a specific span or a specific niche itself. There's one more thing which I feel like, chat logs. So if you have a certain, I would say, legal application, like just courtroom proceedings and things like that, like things which need a stenographer or which need text records to be available for a certain amount of time, but could be discarded like quick notes. They could be kind of using it. And where I see the best, I would say, a crucial application right now is just DeFi trade logs. Because with, I would say, so many applications of DeFi, you need that centralized or just somewhere where you could see it all. So it kind of serves as a good bookkeeping because let's say if I'm running DeFi protocol, I would want to see just a daily turnaround. Might not keep it for the long term, but yeah, just having it makes it sense. And in gaming right now, the only reason why Web3 gaming suffers is latency. Uh, Recently, like, I kind of came across this Magic Blocks ephemeral rollup article, right?
Well, I have heard about.
Yeah, so the millisecond latency goes down to somewhere as well good as 50. So, which is not bad because normally when you're playing online or when you're playing multiplayer, right? Uh, let's say you have a decent enough internet. I mean, your pings could go if you have a local server. Let's say now if I'm playing on an Indian server sitting in India, my ping would be somewhere between 10-20 on the best internet.
Ideally, I guess the ping should be below 100 ms.
Yeah, below 120 ms is fine enough. And if you're kind of able to register an action post happening at 50 ms, it's good enough because your gameplay is not really being altered. There's no screen freezing. So, yeah, gaming, I would see like, and even iGaming for that instance. Now,
And even Magic Blocks, like they are also introduced. They have also introduced this ephemeral rollups on gaming style bundle.
yeah, exactly. So, it's like completely gaming oriented product. And I feel like just like how we have these console games, PC games, Web3 games, right? There's also this other industry called as iGaming or real money games, right? So, they could also kind of benefit a lot from ephemeral rollups because you just want data to be there as long as there is the match or the round is happening. So all of these, something like stake.com, I see them ideally using ephemeral rollups for a lot of the games. WSOP, World Series of Poker, if they're hosting a tournament, I just see for the good safekeeping and ethical standpoint, ephemeral rollups would kind of help the real money gaming guys a lot.
And finally, are there any limitations or trade-offs that developers or users should be aware of before choosing ephemeral rollups?
See, now trade-offs are like, the first is your data is kind of going to vanish if you're not storing it for a long time. When it kind of comes to that data, like recreation, right? Now, recreation is something that is also very much hindered because now when you look at the traditional rollups, right, you could just go back to a transaction log, understand the parameters and possibly recreate that situation. But if you're not kind of storing the data properly, there might be a challenge wherein like, okay, fine, you may not be able to recreate that scenario or even understand what has happened. So,
Others who is really keen on intermediate transactions happening, so then they need to think of some alternative as ephemeral rollup will be discarding the intermediate states and only mostly it will be storing only the final states. So they need to think of an order.
Exactly. And when you kind of even look at it from just a ethos standpoint, right? It kind of now it puts you as a user in a kind of standstill position because data is everything for which kind of we are coming on chain, right? Just securing that data and kind of having inclusivity there to kind of push it off anywhere we want, share it with people, and share it across the network. So that kind of becomes a major trade-off, wherein like people have to take your word for it if it has happened. There is no way of kind of going around the back. But yeah, I kind of still like the benefits because not everything needs data saving, right? So you kind of reduce the strain overall. Now, if let's say your servers were running at max capacity with all your renders for a game or your application demands, right? You would, by using the ephemeral rollups, the demand for the infrastructure demand is much lower. It could be integrated in anything and everything. And the throughput is increased, right? So it's just more dynamic, more fast. And when we kind of look at, okay, fine, user shouldn't understand what's happening.
Okay.
Like remove the blockchain out, everyone's been talking about it. Ephemeral rollups make it a bit more possible than what's available on the optimistic rollups or the ZK based options right now.
Okay, sir, responded. And yeah, that's a wrap. Thank you, Service. Thank you for joining us on the Dojima podcast. We hope you enjoyed today's podcast, Ephemeral Rollups and their role in shaping the future of blockchain scalability.
It was great fun being here. I love diving into buzzwords, so it was kind of a good kind of research for me as well. And yeah, excited to kind of, see how this space pans up. And yeah, I feel with kind of product or infra like Dojima, right? It just kind of ties into a lot of these narratives or a lot of these products that are being innovated for future as well. So yeah, excited to see how things pan out for everyone.
So yeah, so follow Dojima for more insightful conversations of Web3 and we'll catch you in the next one. Bye.